Hello! Today we are going to be continuing on with more decimals, and we're looking at section 4.2, which is adding and subtracting decimals. Now specifically we're going to focus on just adding in this part, and then in the next part we'll do subtracting of decimals. Okay? So when we add, we always want to essentially add like terms. Now we're going to go back and revisit this idea of flats, rods, and units that we've been exploring in this curriculum. So make sure that you kind of read this over. I'm not going to read it to you, but you always want to try to think of those units like that. So let's go ahead and add some of these together. Now some of these are going to be very simple, and you're going to say, why are we doing this with the drawings? But just like everything else, and we're just trying to give you a mental picture of what this looks like, and then as you get a little bit better at this, then you wouldn't necessarily need to do these all of this drawing out. Hopefully you won't have to in the end. Right? Hopefully you can get to the point where you can just do the numbers because it's so much faster. But we can see that what we've got here is 5 units, or 5 thousandths, tenths, hundredths, thousandths. And here we have 3 that are the same unit. So tenths, hundredths, thousandths, we're talking about 3 units. And so we can actually add these together. You can see we end up with 8 of these. And so we end up with 8 thousandths. So this would be 0.008. Now our equation then would be 0.005 plus 0.003 equals 0.008, because we're all in the same, we're all working in units here. All right, now let's look down here at one for us to do that's not already finished, at least not all the way. Represent this sum and then determine it. So I've got 0.023, in other words, tenths, hundredths, thousandths, or 23 thousandths. Okay, you can also think of that as 2 rods and 3 units. And we're going to add that to 0.031. And this is rods and units. So 1, 2, 3 rods and 1 unit. Now when we add all that together, we get 5 rods and 4 units. None of those can be combined down, so we'll just say that that's the same as what we did right over here. For instance, if we ended up coming up with 11 rods, we could change that into a flat and 1 rod left over. But we don't have anything that big. So when we go through and we add these up, you can see that we end up with 5 of these flats, 5 of these rods and 4 units. Now you might also think of this as 3 plus 1 is 4 in the units. 2 plus 3 is 5 rods. 0 and 0 make 0. 0 flats. And of course we have 0 holes. But this is how we can represent it using rods, flats, and units. Let's represent this one. 0.103, so that's 1 flat, 0 rods, 3 units. Here I've got 0.026, or in other words 26 thousandths. That's 2 rods and 6 units. When you put all these together, I'm going to end up getting 1 flat, 2 rods, and 9 units. Right? So we got 1, we got 2, and we got 9. Okay, so 1 flat, 2 rods, 9 units. You could also think of that, and again, nothing gets changed over, so it's still just the same. We can't condense anything. If you just look at adding these up, we've got 9 units, 2 rods, 1 flat, 0 holes. Okay. Here's one where, in the end, I'm just going to give you a heads up. We are going to be able to change something over in the end. Okay. So 004, that's just 4 units. 007, that's going to be 7 units. And then when you put those together, we end up with 11 of them. And so the thing is that whenever we have more than 10, we can group them together. These all group together and they become a single rod. When we have 10 units, that makes one rod. So if I was going to write these in the fewest symbols as possible, I'd have one rod and one unit. Now you can also see that represented here. 4 plus 7 is 11, but I know that I'm going to have one there, 0 flat. So that's going to be my answer. And we've done this before, I'm sure, this idea of carrying something over to the next column. So we just get 0.011. Okay, let's look at a few more. Represent this sum and determine the math equation. So 0.061, that's 6 rods and 1 unit. And this one over here is 5 rods and 2 units. And we put all those together. They look something like that. Right? We end up with 11 of these rods, or 11 of the tenths, and then just 3 units. These can all be grouped together to make one flat. So I get 1 flat, 1 rod, 3 units. Okay. If I was going to write this out a little cleaner, it might look like this. There we go. Now, you can also get that same idea if we come down here and look at our equation. We know that 1 plus 2 is 3. 6 plus 5 is 11. I'll put the 1 here and carry that 1 up next. Remember, that's that idea of regrouping. That's that idea of taking the 11 rods we had and saying, you know what, instead of 11 rods, let's make it 1 flat and 1 rod. So I put the 1 rod here and I carry that up. And we get that. Okay. Why don't you guys try this one? It's a good place to pause, have you do one on your own. And I'll go ahead and get this put up here. Okay. All right. So here we end up getting 3 flats. I get 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's see, 5 and 4. That makes 9. 9 of these rods, and then I get 10 of the units. When these all go together, these are all going to come together to form 1 rod, right? Then, look, I had 9 rods up here before. If I take these 9 and I add that 1 more in together, those are all going to make 1 extra flat. So using the fewest possible symbols, we get 4 of these flats. And if you add these together, again, we know that we're going to end up with 4, 0, 0, but the reason is because 8 and 2 makes 10, and so those 10 units turn into 1 rod, so it's like carrying 1 up to the next column, because this is our rods column. 1 plus 5 plus 4 is 10, so I would put, 10 rods make a flat, so I'll put the 0 here, and I'll just turn that into 1 whole flat. Now 1 plus 2 plus 1 makes 4. Okay, it's another good one to try to do on your own. I'm going to just go ahead and get this done here in the magic of time lapse. All right, so we got that done. And now when I look at this, I see that I've got 10 units. So I'll box these up, and I'm going to put those all together and turn this into 1 more rod. So that's a rod instead. Then I'm going to come up here to the rods, and I notice that, hey, I have a group of 10. So here's 10 of them, and those I'm going to turn into 1 more flat. And then I can say, hey, look at this. I've got 10 flats. These can all go together and make 1 big whole, or a cube. So using the fewest symbols as possible, it looks like this. I've got 1 whole cube, I've got 1 rod left over, and I've got one one unit. So the answer to this will be 1.0 flats 1 1. So that will be my answer. And again, just that idea of using addition and carrying things over, which I know some of you guys know. So that's 11. So we'll carry the 1 because we regrouped it. Right here, these 11 units became 1 rod. That's what got carried up and over. And then there was 1 left over. So 1 plus 4 plus 6 is 11. So I'm going to regroup this and take 11 of these rods and turn it into 1 flat with 1 left over. So there. And then here's the flat that gets carried up. 1 plus 4 plus 5 is 10 flats. These 10 flats get regrouped into 1 whole amount. Okay? All right, so the standard algorithm that we're going to be doing is basically align the numbers vertically. And this is what I've been doing over to the side. I know that many of you are already comfortable, and I thought it was just nice to do with the visual. Then you're going to start on the furthest digit to the right. Okay, in this case, it's going to be the thousands. You're going to add them, and then you carry things up. That's just what we've been doing. Then you start working your way left from there. Oops, sorry, that jumped. Computer does that sometimes. Until you finish up. You just keep adding, you keep carrying. Anything that is too big to fit in that column, then you carry it over to the next column. Okay, let's look at a few words. These are some words that you're going to use whenever you're talking about adding. If you see something like 6 is added to 9, well, one thing to be careful of is this right here and this right here. This actually means you're going to change the numbers around. You're going to swap the numbers order. And that seems weird, but I think it's important to just kind of understand with the language what you're really doing. When you group everything in all together, it's easy to mix up when they get more complicated. So this says 6 is added to 9. I would write that as 9 plus 6, because if it says 6 is added to 9, it means start at 9 and increase it by 6. If we're using the language more than, 3 more than 8, that means start at 8 and then increase it by 3. That will take you up to 11 then, obviously. Now these other ones, they don't need to be changed around. The sum of 7 and 4 is just 7 plus 4. Increased by 2, increased by 5, that's 2 plus 5. The total of, or just plus, or whatever. Okay? Okay, let's do some of these the more conventional way now. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put some placeholding zeros in here so that, I see how many decimals I have. They should all have the same number of decimals. There's 3 decimals here, so I'm going to make it so they all have 3 decimals. I just put zeros on the end of that. This is 6. 2 plus 3 is 5. Nothing's been carried yet. 3 plus 8 plus 2, I'm going to add the 8 and 2 together. 8 plus 2 is 10, plus 3 is 13. So I'll put the 3 here, and I'll carry the 1 up. 1 plus 4 plus 7, that's 11, and 1 makes 12. Carry the 1 up, and that makes 6. So 62.356. Done. I see I've got 3 decimals here, so I want them to all have 3 decimal places. That's a 1. 4 and 3 makes 7. That makes 13. Carry the 1. 6 plus 7 is 13, right? So I put the 3 here, and I carry 1 up. 2 and 8 make 10. Plus 1 makes 11. I carry the 1 up. And I got 1 and 1 make 2. So 21.371. Something like this is actually a lot harder to do when it's written horizontally. A lot of people write them horizontally because that's how they read them in books. But to write them vertically is going to be much more beneficial, I think. So let's do that. 0.065, 0.008, 5, and 4.1. Now, if I want to add all these together, I'm going to make sure they have the same number of decimals. So just put in 0.000 there, 000 there. And then if you want to put zeros here on the front end, you can. Some people like to. There we go. 5 and 8 makes 13. We'll carry the 1. 1 and 6 makes 7. Nothing gets carried. And then we get 9.713. Done. All right, what is 0.23 more than 1.5? So notice that this is one of those where it says more than. So, that's one where it's most appropriate to swap the numbers. Stop jumping around. So I would start at 1.5, and I'm going to add 0.23 to it. Okay. So I would probably write this as 1.5 plus 0.23. Now I need to put my place holding 0 in there so we have the same number of decimals, and that's just 7.1, and we are done. 1.73. What is the sum of these two? So if it's the sum of these two, then we just write them in that order, right? This would just be 0.06 plus 0.17. And it's best to write them in vertical fashion, 0.06, 0.17. We'll go ahead and put a little plus sign in here. And that's going to be 13, carry 1. So we get 0.23. This is increased by that much. So 0.265 is increased by 0.082. We'll just keep them in that order. 0.265, 0.082, and then we'll get 7. That's 14, carry the 1. Oops. And there. 347. Okay. Last problem here is a word problem. I know some people don't like word problems, but they're not so bad. An athlete bicycles 17.2 miles on Monday, 6.7 on Tuesday, 12.4 on Wednesday. What's the total distance? When I read total distance, that's making me think I'm going to be adding things together. So I'll take 17.2, 6.7, and 12.4. And that's what we're going to be adding together. 2 and 7 make 9, and 4 makes 13. So we'll put the 3 there, and we carry the 1. 1 and 7 makes 8, plus 6 makes 14, 15, 16. Right? Or you can regroup them and think of 6 plus 2 is 8, and 1 and 7 make 8, and 8 and 8 make 16. However you want to do it, you should get 16 by adding those all together. We'll carry that 1, and we get 36.3 miles. Please remember your label on that as well. All right, so this is decimal addition. I hope that this was helpful to you. In just a minute, we're going to move on and do some decimal subtraction as well. Hint, it's just about the same. All right, good luck.